There's a quiet discomfort most people feel, and almost never name. It's the feeling of doing something not because it's right, but because everyone else seems to be doing it. You stay silent in a meeting even when something feels wrong. You nod along to opinions you don't respect. You buy things you don't actually want. You pursue goals you never consciously chose, not out of conviction, out of momentum. And later, when the results arrive, the confusion sets in. How did I end up here? Why did I go along with that? Most suffering doesn't come from obvious failures. It comes from quiet compliance, from subtle decisions that felt safe in the moment and costly in the long run. This isn't about fixing your life. It isn't about standing out or pushing back. It's about clarity, about recognizing the invisible force that steers your choices every day and loosening its grip, not to rebel, not to resist, but to see clearly enough that it stops deciding for you, and in seeing more clearly, to suffer less. The force has a name. It's called social proof. At its simplest, social proof is the tendency to assume that if a lot of people believe something, approve of something, or do something, then it's probably correct. Not because we've examined it carefully, not because it aligns with our values, but because so many people can't all be wrong, right? This isn't stupidity. It isn't a personal flaw. It's a deeply human shortcut. When situations are unclear, uncertain, or emotionally charged, the mind doesn't want to sit in ambiguity for long. So instead of turning inward, it looks outward. It scans the room, the group, the culture. It quietly asks, what are other people doing here? And then it follows, often without discussion, often without resistance, sometimes without any awareness at all. The danger isn't that other people are wrong. The danger is subtler than that. The danger is that in moments like these, the crowd slowly takes over the role your own judgment was meant to play, and you don't notice when the handoff happens. You still feel like you're choosing, but the choice was made for you earlier. And most of the time, no one ever points that out.
Hey guys, we're Wisdom, based in Abu Dhabi. We use AI tools to make these concepts come to life, but it's our amazing team who goes deep, breaking down powerful philosophical ideas and showing how they really apply in everyday life. We hope you enjoy today's content.
In relationships, social proof often shows up as endurance. People stay longer than they should because everyone around them says the same familiar things. Relationships are hard. You've already invested so much. No one's perfect. And slowly, those phrases drown out the quieter voice inside. The one that isn't dramatic or emotional, just honest. The one that knows something is off. Not broken in a visible way, but misaligned, lined at a deeper level. So instead of listening, people tell themselves they're just being unrealistic, and they stay. In identity, social proof decides what success is supposed to look like. Certain careers get praised, certain lifestyles are admired, certain timelines are labeled as normal. And without ever consciously choosing, people step into those templates, they work toward them, they sacrifice for them. And when they finally arrive, the feeling isn't fulfillment, it's confusion. A strange emptiness that's hard to explain because on paper, everything looks right. In regret, social proof sounds almost reasonable. Well, this is just how things are. Everyone does it this way. So discomfort gets normalized instead of questioned. Pain becomes something to manage rather than something to examine. And over time, people stop asking whether things could be different at all. In work and rest, social proof quietly rewrites the rules. Exhaustion becomes a sign of ambition. Being constantly busy starts to feel like proof of importance, and slowing down gets labeled as laziness, because no one else seems to slow down either. Finally, in emotional attachment, social proof teaches people what they're supposed to want: approval, validation, belonging, even when chasing those things comes at the cost of peace. Even when the pursuit leaves them anxious, performative, or disconnected from themselves. It feels necessary because everyone else is chasing it too. And that's how normal slowly becomes unlivable. Here's what the mind is really trying to protect: belonging. For most of human history, belonging wasn't emotional comfort, it was survival. Being part of the group meant food, protection, shared labor. Being cast out meant danger, sometimes death. So the nervous system learned a simple rule very early on: if many people agree, it's safer to agree too. That rule worked for a long time, and it never went away. The instinct is still there, quietly running in the background, even though the world has changed. The mistake isn't following others. That's human. The mistake is confusing popularity with truth and consensus with wisdom. When everyone around you agrees, the crowd feels comforting, not because it's right, but because it spreads responsibility. If everyone is wrong together, no one feels individually exposed. No one has to stand alone with uncertainty or doubt. And that's what makes this bias so seductive. It offers relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from isolation, relief from having to think deeply, carefully, and independently. There's no moral failure here, no weakness to overcome, just an ancient survival mechanism doing exactly what it was designed to do, in a world it was never designed for. Instead of trying to fight social proof, it helps to do something simpler. Just loosen it a little. You don't have to push back or argue with it, you just start noticing it. One way to do that is to ask yourself a quiet question in moments where you feel yourself agreeing too quickly. Would I still believe this if no one else did? You're not asking that to force a different answer. You're just listening. You're checking where the thought is actually coming from. Another small shift is adding a pause when you feel social momentum pulling you along. Before you agree, before you buy something, before you say yes, before you react, just take a breath. It sounds simple, but silence creates space. And a lot of the time, clarity shows up there on its own. And then there's one perspective that helps keep everything grounded. Large groups are really good at spreading behavior. They're not especially good at producing truth. You don't have to repeat that to yourself or analyze it. Just let it sit quietly in the background while you make decisions. That space, that pause, is often enough. It's where you start hearing yourself again. Over time, really understanding social proof starts to change how you move through life. You stop rushing towards certainty. You feel less pulled by trends, opinions, and that constant background anxiety everyone seems to share. Your decisions begin to feel more yours, more internally aligned, even when they're quieter, less impressive, or harder to explain to other people. And something else happens. Regret shows up less often. Not because you suddenly make perfect choices, but because the choices belong to you. You're no longer outsourcing them to the room, the culture, or the moment. And a different kind of confidence starts to take shape. Not the loud kind that needs approval, not the kind that performs. A calm, grounded confidence. One that doesn't need agreement to exist. It's steady, and it stays with you. You don't need to reject society. You don't need to stand apart or prove independence. Clarity doesn't come from pushing back. It doesn't come from opposition. It comes from awareness. When you start to notice the pull of the crowd, and you see it without judging yourself for it. Something softens. The tension drops. The noise quiets. And you begin to hear yourself again. Not a dramatic voice, not a rebellious one. Just a steady sense of what feels true, and often that's all the wisdom you are missing. Not louder answers, just quieter seeing.
Thanks for spending time in this. If this sparked a new way of thinking, hit like and subscribe to keep the ideas flowing. And don't forget, check the description for the links to the resources and the original books we used today. We'll see you in the next one.